Welcome back, Camly, to another Tea Time with Cam. It's been a while. I have a big cup of green tea here. I would show you, but I would probably spill. It is green. Today I want to talk about the journey of motherhood. First of all, in regards to navigating one's self-identity through that journey, but also as more of like a big picture idea, motherhood in relation to the patriarchy. I do not intend to exclude trans women from this conversation. However, trans motherhood is just not something I relate to and not something that I can share my experience with. So I will be talking about motherhood from a cisgendered perspective, simply because that is my personal experience with motherhood. The issue really boils down to the fact that mothers aren't really treated like people. And that's both in their own internal world and externally, how society views mothers. The second I became pregnant, before I even told people, I felt so different right away. It immediately shifted my self-identity. In that moment, I very much became a mother. And it's very odd to go from being just a 16-year-old girl navigating life, making mistakes, to now being a parent and all the weight that comes with that. I immediately was very driven to prove everybody wrong. Right off the bat, I heard a lot of opinions about me being a mother at 16, and I really felt like I had so much to prove to everybody. And so I told myself, both for my daughter's sake and to kind of, like I said, prove those people wrong, I'm gonna be the best mother I can be. And I just spent months doing so much research. Before I even told my parents that I was pregnant, I was taking prenatal vitamins that I went and snuck off to the store to go buy. I was trying to be the healthiest I could during my pregnancy. I had an app, and every little thing that I ate, I would look it up on the app and make sure it was safe for my baby. I was so committed to motherhood. I'd watch videos about what I should have in my hospital bag, what I should keep in my diaper bag. Even in my pregnancy, I was very, very stressed out about her feeding schedule and her sleeping schedule. I was really overthinking it. I was sitting there pregnant, when am I gonna know she's hungry? How am I gonna know how much to feed her? Looking up all these charts and things, and I just really wanted to be so prepared. And it really consumed me right away. Like I said, 1 second I was a teenage girl, and the next second, the only thing I could think about was motherhood. And especially when you kind of get later into your pregnancy and you're very visibly pregnant, it really does a number on your self-identity. Your body just really isn't yours. I felt so removed from myself. The girl that I was before, that 16-year-old girl, she just kind of started to fade away. The things that I liked, the music I listened to. I even took out my nose ring because I wanted to look more responsible and mature. And just a few months earlier, I was so excited to get my nose pierced. My mom finally let me. And of course, I was making all these sacrifices for my daughter, letting go of the stupid teenage girl that I was so I can flourish into the mother I needed to be. But looking back, it really didn't need to be that way. Of course I was doing all the right things and preparing for my baby as one does, but I didn't need to stop being me in order to be a good mom. I didn't need to throw away every aspect of who I was, the things that had nothing to do with being a mom and gave me a sense of self. Becoming a mom at that age really did some damage on my self-identity. And when you're that young, that's kind of your whole purpose in that moment, is to kind of forge that self-identity for yourself. Those are your formative years to figure out who you are. And so I was very stunted in that. And it's simply because I wanted to be viewed as a responsible, mature mother. And I realized that I had all of these ideas about what a mother is supposed to be. As I started to share my journey of motherhood on the internet, those ideas were just reinforced to me. It felt like anything I did outside of being a mother was scrutinized. And even more so, I started to reconfigure myself to fit into this box. And part of fitting into that box was getting married. We're a family, I have a kid, we live together, we should be married. You know, looking back, that was 100% me falling under the pressure of societal expectations. Yes, I loved him. Yes, I always planned on marrying him. You know, we started dating when I was 14, and right away I knew I would marry him very young. But I only wanted that so bad because that's what I was taught to want. And so right when we turned 18, we got married and we started trying for another baby, because at that point it had been reinforced to me so much. I felt like my only purpose was to be a mother and raise kids. And I wasn't fulfilling my purpose well enough if I didn't give my daughter a sibling. I grew up with siblings. I couldn't imagine my life without a ton of siblings. Initially, I wanted to have 4 kids. There was other reasons why we decided to try for another baby, but more than anything, we just didn't want our kids to have a big age gap. So at 18, I started trying for a second child and got pregnant again. I went through a lot during that pregnancy. You know, when we were trying to get pregnant, it seemed like the right decision. We just got married. Things were going really well. I was very hopeful for my future. You know, we had a plan, and part of that plan was having another kid. But after I was pregnant, very quickly, my life just fell apart. My marriage fell apart. That plan we had fell apart. And I had never been as lost as I was. In a way, it felt like this baby was my only hope, the only thing kind of keeping me alive. It felt like the only good thing going on in my life at the time. And obviously I was still fighting for the sake of my first daughter. But I just kind of had it in my head that this new baby would come along and change things. I just remember the honeymoon phase we went through when Colette was first born, and things were just so magical having a newborn. And I just thought that this baby would come along and fix everything. And it doesn't work like that at all. Babies don't fix things. Growing up, my mom kept having babies, and she was in a miserable marriage. And I think she was trying to fix things by having another kid and another kid and another kid until she had 5 of them. And her marriage was still miserable. And so I think that's kind of why I got that idea in my head, because it was something that was taught to me, something I saw play out with my parents. And you know, watching my siblings come home from the hospital and all this excitement, it did help with things for a while. Things were more cheery and happy, and having a new baby really did change things in our house for a while, until the baby grew up and it got a little more difficult, and they were both even more stressed out than they were before. And so it's sad to see that that played out in the next generation. But yeah, during that second pregnancy, I was so entirely consumed with being pregnant. You know, before, when I was pregnant with Colette, I didn't know what to expect, and a lot of that obsession with pregnancy was more of me just being an anxious, worried mess and wanting to know everything in order to be prepared. But the second time around, it was my whole identity. It was my only personality trait. And I got comments like that all the time. People who watched my videos were like, do you have any other personality right now other than being pregnant? You know, in every photo I took, I'd like emphasize my belly. And I think part of it was that I was just trying to cope, feeling like, okay, well, my life is falling apart, but at least I have this, and all that second baby represented for me. It led me to really be in denial about so many things. Instead of trying to fix the problems at hand, I was holding out. And I was almost waiting for the due date, thinking it would change things. Really just putting off what needed to happen. And I just fell deeper into denial about the reality of my situation and what needed to happen. And then she was born, and I felt so strange. I was so physically and mentally exhausted from everything I had endured in the last 9 months, and it really prevented me from bonding with my daughter initially. She was born, and it just didn't feel like I thought it would. I didn't really have a typical birthing experience with my first daughter. She was in the NICU and I spent a lot of time away from her in those first few weeks. And so now I was in the hospital with her at all times. And my husband was leaving the hospital every few hours to go to the house and get more drugs. He was going through withdrawals as I was giving birth. And so I was there alone with my baby, and the realization just hit me, like, things aren't gonna change just because she's born. Things didn't feel the same as it did when my first daughter was born because things just aren't the same. And so at that point, I was just completely disassociated. I could not handle that realization, and I no longer had that security of like being pregnant. In a way, I kind of felt like being pregnant protected me. My husband was physically abusive towards me, but I felt like he wouldn't take it that far because I was pregnant. And so now not being pregnant anymore, I felt way more vulnerable to that. So that security that pregnancy provided, as well as that self-identity, I identified with being pregnant so much. And so when I was no longer pregnant, I felt like part of me had just been ripped out. I was scared and I had no idea who I was. It really sent me into a full-fledged identity crisis. I don't know who I am when I'm not pregnant. And the little parts of me that I still had left at that time, the things that were truly me, had been picked apart for so long. I had been made to feel so worthless. I really hated myself so much already. And so all that was left was this self-hatred. And I fell into a very deep postpartum depression that I never experienced before with my first. I feel like postpartum depression is something that is kept very hush-hush. No one wants to really talk about it. It's such a serious issue, and when we don't talk about it and recognize it, it just does so much damage to these mothers, and it goes unseen. I've been dealing with depression my whole life. I was diagnosed at age 12, and so depression is nothing new to me, but this postpartum depression, it's really like nothing I had experienced before. It was on such a deeper level because on top of being extremely depressed, I was a brand new mom and I was breastfeeding and I didn't get any sleep. And I feel like there was all this pressure for me to be doing a good job. I chose this for myself. I chose to have another baby at 19. So many people told me it was a bad idea. And once again, I felt the need to prove everyone wrong. So as miserable as I was, I couldn't let anyone see it. Looking back, I know that more than anything, I needed help. I needed to tell people that I wasn't doing okay. I needed to be honest with myself and the people I loved. And it breaks my heart knowing that I didn't feel like I could be honest about that. I felt so incredibly alone. It was just me and my husband, and he's the only one I felt like I had during that time. And it was supposed to be us in it together, but just weeks after she was born, the abuse continued and really worsened. And when my daughter was 1 month old, I finally left that situation. And just 2 months after that, my husband took his life. And that's when I hit my tipping point. I really sat with myself and realized, oh my God, what just happened? Who am I? I'm all on my own now, and I hate myself and I don't even know who I am. And I'm raising these girls by myself now, and I still loved him, and I was struck with grief, and I felt like it was all my fault, and I was truly at rock bottom. And looking back on everything that happened from when I first got pregnant with my first daughter up until that point, it really hit me just how much I had lost myself in motherhood. I truly just abandoned myself the second I saw that pregnancy test. My passions, the things that I loved, what I thought was important, anything that didn't fall under the societal expectations that we put on mothers, it was just completely abandoned. And so I worked really hard for the years that followed to come back to myself, to figure out who I am again. Obviously, I was still a mother. I always put my daughters as the priority, even while still trying to find myself. That is a huge part of who I am, but it is not the only thing that I am. There is so much more to me than that. I have hobbies now, and I love music again. I just fully stopped listening to music for several years, and that has always been a huge part of who I am since childhood, and I just let it go. Moms don't have time for music. Moms don't have time to enjoy anything. I need to dedicate my whole life to my kids. Otherwise, I'm a failure. I got my nose pierced again, because it's what makes me feel like me. And my kids are gonna benefit way more from having a mom who expresses herself, who has a self-identity, who is strong in that self-identity, rather than having a mom who sacrifices everything. As a mom, yes, there's certain sacrifices that you should make for your kids. They should always be the priority in your life, but you need to make time for yourself and those parts of you that you love, those parts that make you you, that fuel your passion. You need to hang on to those parts. They might not get as much attention anymore once you become a mother, but you can't just let them go. I see so many women get pregnant and just completely lose themselves in the same way I did. We need to stop putting all this pressure on mothers. Mothers are criticized relentlessly for every little move they make, and it's such a double standard. We do not put half as much of this pressure on fathers. They are often praised for doing the bare minimum in fatherhood. Meanwhile, there is all this expectations for mothers to behave a certain way, even outside of their parenting. When they go out in the world without their children, they're still expected to behave in a way that a mother should. I get told all the time, "Aren't you a mother?" I'll get a new tattoo. Someone will say, "Aren't you a mom?" And it's like, yeah, I am. Moms have lives. Moms are people. They can do things for themselves. It's just so heartbreaking because I know what those types of comments can do to a person. To all the moms out there, I know you already put so much pressure on yourself to be a good mom. I think that's every mother's worst fear, is that they're not doing a good enough job. And so it's really easy to internalize it when it seems like the whole world has an opinion on the way you're doing things. Know your values as a parent. Know what's important to you. Know what you think matters when raising kids. Know what your own kids' needs are. And don't let anyone question it. You're their mom. You know better than anyone. You deserve to be your own person. We need to stop shaming mothers for every little thing they do. Unless someone is doing something that puts their kid in danger, don't comment on how a mother is choosing to raise her kids. Don't comment on how a mother is choosing to live her life. You don't get an opinion. They're not your kids, and it's not your life. You don't understand how dehumanizing it is to be treated that way. When Roe versus Wade was overturned, it really hurt. Part of me thought, am I really surprised? It's been really clear for a long time that women are seen as incubators, as baby makers. That's our purpose in life. The way that society is structured has made that very clear, but that's not every woman's purpose, and we need to change that way of thinking. Like I said, it's just so dehumanizing. But there's a lot of power in taking back your purpose and recognizing that it's so much bigger than baby making and being a mother. I have so much more to say about this topic, but I would just go on all day if I continued. So that's it for today. Thanks for letting me get on my soapbox. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video, Cam&Fam.